Our sixth speaker is Christopher Rogers, who's seeking effective ways of alerting matadors in the state of an emergency.
Campus emergencies can halt operations, and they can threaten both students and staff. In the past, hurricanes have flooded campuses across the Midwestern, Eastern United States. Tornadoes, supercells in 2009 and 2011 have created tremendous wind damage to campuses. Earthquakes, such as the Loma Parade earthquake and even the Northwood earthquake here, cause millions of dollars in damages to college campuses. Fires, chemical spills, even viral outbreaks, they all have caused damage and threatened colleges. And also violent acts such as bombings, shootings, and riots. They've injured students, even hurt and killed students in California, Illinois, Texas, Oklahoma. A critical, important piece to this puzzle, a critical, important way for us to be able to navigate these emergencies is getting out emergency information as fast and as rapidly as possible. And the best way to do this is through campus emergency notification systems. However, campus emergency notification systems have a slight problem. Getting a message to students is only half the battle. The students have to actually read the message, and they have to act on the message itself. However, much of the prior research that we've seen out there really has been focused on system effectiveness. It hasn't looked at whether or not these messages actually can generate immediate action from students and staff. And this is what my research is seeking to fill the gap in the literature of. Essentially, I want to take a look at, or I did take a look at, whether or not rapid emergency notifications can be predicted by health behavior theory. In addition, I also wanted to see what other factors might be associated with rapid compliance in students so that we can start developing tailored intervention to help both staff and students. The way I did this was by going class to class administering surveys. It took quite a while. I went through and I asked questions that I based out of prior research and also meetings I had with campus emergency personnel. In order to do this, I used two theories that are commonly used in emergency preparedness. The first theory was a theory of planned behavior. And the theory of planned behavior has three main components. And these three main components are built to predict intention to comply in situations. Now, this is an important key because we can't just create emergencies on campus. So instead, we have to look at intention to comply to these emergency situations. And those three components are attitude. And attitude specifically deals with the students' understanding, their prior knowledge about emergencies. It also subjective norm, which deals with students' understanding or beliefs about what their friends might do in emergencies and what their family might do in emergencies. And finally, it also deals with perceived behavioral control, which is a student's ability or belief that they can actually do something in an emergency situation. The second theory I used was the protection motivation theory. Now, this theory is built to explain the effects of fear on behavior. And it uses two main pathways, and those two pathways are threat appraisal. And threat appraisal specifically looks at students' their beliefs about the severity and their beliefs about their vulnerability in these emergency situations. And the second pathway is response efficacy. Specifically, I wanted to find out, will students or do students believe that emergency messages can actually help them in an emergency situation? Now, in order to do this, I collected over 1,500 surveys going class to class. I did this from the fall 2017 semester through the spring 2018 semester, and took all this data and I analyzed it by building 7 separate logistic regression models to find out all these factors and see how they're all associated with student rapid compliance. Now, specifically, I included 7 different emergency scenarios on each survey because I wanted to look at rapid compliance to a variety of emergencies that might happen on campus. I did them to active shooter situations. I did them to riots. I asked students about fires, chemical spills, even health hazard outbreaks. Like, what if there's an infection on campus? Or what if there's an air quality emergency and the campus gets closed down? I used all of these, and I took those regression models and tried to predict student rapid compliance. And what I found was pretty interesting. First of all, nearly 1/4 of students here on campus didn't even know there's an emergency notification system here. This was extremely interesting, considering the fact that during my study window, there were 2 emergency notifications that went out. Now, I also asked other questions other than this. I asked about whether or not they felt that these emergency notifications were important, and I asked about whether they felt they were understandable. And I found something kind of interesting. When I asked these questions, there were no differences in student responses depending on their age, depending on their ethnicity, depending on how long they've been at the school. So it was a freshman all the way to their final semester in their master's or doctoral program. It didn't matter. And even if they knew about the emergency notification system, it didn't matter. What this tells me is that most people on campus believe that emergency notifications are pretty understandable and they're very important. Now, I also asked them about the relevance of these emergency notifications, and here's where I found some very specific differences. Males and people who identify as minority were much more likely to report these messages not very relevant to them. In addition, newer people to college, like freshmen, they also were much more likely to report as not very relevant to them. Now, this brings up a very important gap in the demographics of our institution that needs to be focused on and understood by campus emergency managers. You see, we need to make sure we take the time to promote our campus emergency notification systems to freshmen when they first arrive here on campus. This is going to help change their ability and their understanding about the relevance of emergency notifications here on campus. Now, I also took a look at theory, and so let's get into that theory. So what I found when I did the logistic regression models to identify these factors or theoretical components that are associated with rapid compliance is that 2 major theory components were most predictive. And this was attitude and subjective norm. Both attitude is kind of dealing with, again, the students' beliefs about their knowledge about the emergencies. And subjective norm, once again, dealing with the students' beliefs about what their friends would do. Both of these predicted compliance 100% of the time. These are important keys to understand for emergency managers. And when I looked at faster developing situations, like robbery situations, active shooters, and fires, things that tend to move a lot quicker, and emergencies that move a lot faster, I found that the perceived behavioral, threat appraisal, and response efficacy, the 2 components of protection motivation theory, were most predictive of these things. And finally, those slow developing situations just take a little while to build, like the health hazards and the air quality. Well, perceived behavioral control. So that's a student's ability, remember, to actually see if they can control the situation was most predictive. So what does this mean to us, right? It's a whole bunch of jargon and gobbledygook. So what does this mean to us here at CSUN? And what does it mean to the campus administrators here at CSUN? Well, regular tests of the emergency notification system may help to normalize receipt of these actual notifications. And it also might help to increase students' perceptions, their perceived behavioral control, their subjective norms, their threat appraisal. You see, prior study has actually already demonstrated that these drills can increase and bring these up in students. And it's important, specifically based on this research, that we understand that if we focus these on faster developing situations, such as active shooter, fire, we can tailor or increase this threat perception even more. Take, for instance, the campus active shooter training video. This active shooter training video, if we can continue to publicize it and build it up and show it to students, in addition to drills, maybe active shooter drills, in addition to tests of the emergency notification system, may be relegated or relevant to the active shooter situation, this can change the student behavior and increase rapid compliance. You see, emergencies and emergency notifications specifically can be the difference between life and death in a situation. And it is critical that emergency managers and emergency personnel here at CSUN take the time to to advertise our notification system to incoming students. Take the time to consider health behavior theory and how we can change and build promotion here on campus. You see, I was here a couple months ago on campus, and an emergency notification went out. And that notification was about a threat of a weapon here on campus. And I looked around when this notification went out, and I saw both staff and students fumbling around trying to figure out what to do. They were confused. Some said, do I stay? Do I go? There were faculty that said, I don't know if we should cancel class or not. There was a tremendous amount of confusion on campus. And I ask you today this. What if there's an emergency alert that goes out right now? What are you going to do? Are you going to run out the door? Are you going to look to your friend and say, hey, is this real? Are you going to look on the news sites to try to find out if this is something that you can confirm? Or are you going to read that message and rapidly comply to the emergency notification system? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christopher.
Thank you.
So after doing this study, would you say that health behavior theory does predict rapid compliance to emergency notifications on this campus?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Yes, I would say that elements of health behavior theory definitely do predict rapid compliance, though health behavior theory as a whole may sometimes need to be segmented out into a more comprehensive or built upon theoretical model. So we can take components from, as I did, theory of planned behavior, as well as components from the protection motivation theory, and build a unified theory here on campus that we can use to build promotion, to build intervention, build activities that we can do here on campus. And being able to combine these together and really tailor intervention and tailor theory to our college, I really think we can make a big difference here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christopher, for sharing your research and providing ways that college campuses can truly prepare in the state of an emergency.